Hey funnel coders, what's up? Today we are going to talk about data imports via the API. Why is this important? Because a lot of times something starts with data, it starts with an import, be it you using a new tool, be it you wanting to do some data analysis, some machine learning, um, or some less technical stuff. Um, but that's where a lot of times your enterprise starts with some data. And the problem is that you might want to import a data through a UI, um, but the tool doesn't have a data import. You can't just click like import table or CSV or something and it just magically happens. Or it has an import, but it's actually somewhat limited. Maybe you can't import all the data that you want. And so at the same time, those tools might have an API that has more capabilities, in which case you can go ahead and use that API, but using that is a little bit different from just clicking buttons in the UI. It has its own pitfalls, it has its own quirks, and we will look at 5 best practices today of how to do this, and then we'll have a demo, an example of how to do it using the ClickFunnels API, and then you should be good to go with the whole thing. Actually, I wanted to do a video about API pagination first, but then I looked into my ClickFunnels account where I wanted to do some data export as a demo and saw that this will be difficult with this amount of data. So I decided to do a data import video first because apparently this is where your enterprise sometimes starts instead. So to the 5 best practices real quick. Number 1, you have to space out your imports. Just be a good citizen and avoid being flagged as someone who is just hammering the API without any break. Maybe even with like simultaneous scripts where you do like requests per second, several requests. So that can get you flagged quite quickly with APIs, or you will just run into rate limits, known rate limits, or just some arbitrary rate limits in some cases. So we'll look at how to handle these in a very basic manner later. The other thing is ensuring that you have valid data, and that's important for you because you want, in the end, clean data in your account. Maybe you're running workflows or anything like that when you just add your data points into your account, then you end up with like bad data in there, and that's the way workflows run against bad data. But also there are sometimes errors during the import, which can be fine because you need, we'll be talking about error handling in a second, but you need good error handling. But then you don't want to just have a bunch of errors without like any, like if you could have avoided them, right? You can just not have them. And then there is error handling, which a good import method should have. So you should be prepared that any request can go wrong because of different problems, rate limit, wrong format, network errors, and you have to be prepared for all of them and handle them accordingly. And then there's observability. That's basically having insight into your import, like what did happen in this amount of time that you imported. Was everything imported correctly according to your script? Did the API respond in any unfavorable way somewhere? Do you have to recover? And maybe that's also the place where you have a mechanism to rerun things, or for some errors you might want to, yeah, just rerun them later, or fix the data and rerun them with the right data, but you need to know like where the problem happened. And the last one is manual and like just testing in general. So this can get as complex as you want it to be, but generally, depending on if this is a one-off thing or if this is and it's like very straightforward, maybe like the example that we'll have in a second, or if it's maybe more dynamic and maybe it's like a long-term thing you want to maintain, like maybe we'll have periodic imports, although yeah, could be that you have periodic imports. So that it would be great if your code is actually tested, and it might evolve and you don't want to break it if it does. So especially if it's running on a server somewhere, then you'll probably want to have it tested in an automated way. And then you will want to test whether everything actually got imported and whether everything looks great on the other side. And that also can be in an automated way, but also you can just go in and test data that everything is ingested as you wished it to manually. So that's what we are going to do. And let's just take a little look at how this would happen here. Okay, just a reminder here, that's the workspace we are going to ingest some data into. And we have this code here that I didn't create mostly. And I asked a robot friend to do that for me. And this is the sample data that we'll have. And we will also have like one thing here that should definitely fail, one thing that shows you some unclean data, and the other ones are just fake contacts with fake, yeah, it's fake, you can see based on the email address. That's where we are going to start looking here. So you probably you may not know Ruby a lot, but I think it's readable enough for us to just go through the whole script, and you will also be able to look at it in GitHub. I will have a link in the show notes or the video notes, and then you can just take a look at this. I think this is pretty straightforward. Just see this as a configuration of your whole script. The API key here is an env variable, environment variable in your computer. Same with the workspace ID, and then this is the base URL that you should be hitting. If you were doing this with actually ClickFunnels, then you would just change the subdomain here and have your values in here, and then that should kind of work. So the default delay we said is 1 second here. If we hit a rate limit, then we'll wait for 30 seconds. And we will take a look at this code in a second, and then just have a quick chat about rate limits, known ones and unknown ones. And this is very basic, so that's not a great handling of this, and I'll show you how others suggest to handle it. Here we just have max retries, and if it doesn't work, then we should actually like probably just stop the script if it doesn't work in this like example, but it's gonna be fine. We won't hit any rate limits anyway, given that we are very conservative here. By the way, there's just some notes here about cleaning your data. So you can clean a bunch of stuff like email validation. Um, well, the very basic stuff, right? Like, is this the right email format? But then also, you can actually, as your cleaning process, you can send the email to a third-party API, have another script to do that, and then just make sure this is an email that actually exists, that's not like blocked by anything, that's maybe active. I don't know what those APIs actually, how capable they are, but you can pre-filter pretty well doing that. And we will have another video about how to do things like that. But that's the basic about the email address. You could ensure the names look good, don't have any weird stuff in it. And you have to be careful with this one, or with just like being too strict about all this, because some people have weird names. That's for sure. You might think like maybe number would be wrong in a name, but a lot of times it isn't. So, and what do we have here? Like, yeah, just general wrong things that you can kind of filter out, like UTF encoding issues, or yeah, you could be not like your table might look fine, and you might have like phone numbers that you identify people with, but if you're missing an email address, the API might tell you, hey, that still doesn't work, although you give me the phone number here. And that's it for the validation step that we talked about. Good for you, good for the API, good for your error handling. This is how we'll be adding the contact to ClickFunnels, and that's basically the post body that we'll be sending, and that's the whole thing about like doing the request itself. And that's importing the contacts. We have some logic here or just some output statements, so we can do a little bit of monitoring. And we're checking for the API key here. It's not a big deal, not bad either. You would notice if it's not there, right? Because you wouldn't have successful responses, but better to be notified here. This was actually the LLM's idea here. And then, yeah, we're reading in the CSV file, establish some tracking counters, and just go through the context that we just loaded through the CSV file, and then we go through the retries here. In case there's like an error, there's logic that will go through the retries, especially with rate limiting. So we're counting retries up here, and because it doesn't make sense to retry something like a 400 or a 422 error, it even tells you that, since this is not recoverable, whereas the 429 is recoverable. And so we'll filling this whole thing with data, and then we are expecting one of these, 200 or 201. After we've done, like, this is basically doing the request here, right? We just looked at this. That's the method there. And then, yeah, if it's like an error we don't understand, we are also just continuing here. And by the way, you can see like if this is an error that we kind of expect that could happen, we have also like special error handling here. And then we just generally catch the errors here and add a little bit more of the error handling. So that's basically the whole thing. We do have a sleep here to space out the request for the with the default delay, and then at the end we have a little summary of everything that went well and everything that failed. So this is basically it. I also asked Claude Code to generate just like a sample thing here. This is what I like to do because I don't trust Claude Code, obviously, and this is a one-off like tests type of thing. I don't write tests for this. It doesn't make a lot of sense here. It's also pretty simple. But I want to test whether like the whole, because there are so many moving parts in this whole like the API needs to be configured correctly. Claude Code needs to have written the correct code, so that there are like moving parts that I expect to be broken on the first try, and then I don't really expect this to be broken, to be honest. Like all this stuff I expect to be pretty kind of solid. Maybe it's definitely not great or perfect or anything, but it will do the job. That's what I kind of expect. But like a single request, doing the single request here, that's where I expect things to break. So I have like a little thing here that will actually do the request. And when I initially did it, tried it out, something was wrong. If I remember correctly, the base URL here was not correct. So I fixed that, and then it all worked. So it didn't take too many tries, but that's what it was. So anyway, yeah, you can see here there is a 200 response here. So now that we have tested that, we can run the whole thing. It will take a little bit of time. So you can see we have imported everything we wanted here, and maybe also something we didn't really want, because maybe we don't want an invalid email here. There could be rare edge cases where you might want to import an email like this and then update it later. That's probably an edge case. That's also the reason probably why we'll still have this possibility here in this software to ingest something like this. But that's for this part here. And just to go back to rate limiting a little bit here, so this logic here says we will retry here after a limit delay, which we said will be like 30 seconds. And then we'll basically come back here again and retry this whole thing. So that's a way to do that. If you don't really know like how much to wait, but that's very basic. That won't save you for a long time. Stripe here has, for example, different rate limits for different objects. You shouldn't be like reading or writing files more than 20 times per second. So that's one thing here, and they will also respond with a 492, but it's not really exactly clear when to retry, unless you do some smart logic for all the objects there. What Stripe suggests here is to just do an exponential backoff. So basically in our example here, we would multiply the retry number times something that is exponential, and then retry with higher and higher rates until it finally works. And reset it again, right? So that's this one. There's another example here for the HubSpot API. They will respond to you with something like this, and that's a little bit easier to, I don't know if it's necessarily easier, it's also more restrictive. If you run to the daily limit, you have to wait until midnight, but you know exactly when to start retrying again, and so to avoid hitting the API too much until then, you can just go in here and say, I'll rerun it, I'll wake up at midnight and rerun it again. Or if it's running on our server or on your computer, you can tell it, hey, let's do it on midnight. So that's this one here. We've seen the whole output there. It gave us a summary of everything that failed, everything that went well. And yeah, we tested manually here. So we went into the thing here, check that we now have 34 of these guys. We did a couple of tests here, and then we ran the full import, and basically that's it. I hope you'll have a lot of success with this. These are the basics for you to do if you want to import things through the API. There's another way of doing this, like batch endpoints that take something maybe like a CSV even, or whatever format, and then lets you do one request, and you can import all the data that you need with one request. That's for another time if we ever need it, but this should get you somewhere in most cases. And I hope you have a lot of success with this. I hope you'll funnel code with that a lot. I just wanted to show you before we go here, our next the next video will be about API pagination, as we mentioned. And you can also go in here, it's open source, and create a new discussion here, and I will have those that are not next up downvoted, and the most upvoted will be up next videos. And I hope you join us for the next live session that will be in a new format where we talk about selling and marketing and obviously technical stuff for your software endeavors. So that's where we'll meet. You'll go to this link and then you'll get notifications about the next session. Have a good one.